Wait, yeah, there we go.
It's on.
You got it.
We're going to call to respond and Revitalize meeting to order. Do we have any public comments? Okay, let's do a roll call.
Number two, sorry.
Mr. Wheeler,
Present.
Mr. Searoy, Mr. Payton,
Present.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Snipes.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, do we have any public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next point of public input.
Public input. The looking for people in the community to come into every meeting if they so choose and tell us their ideas. And they don't have to be subject matter experts. They can just have an idea what they think would be important. This committee is meeting for, it's a catch-all for things that may not be related to public safety or the courts or workforce or businesses. Those committees would hear those ideas. This could be something just completely different. Mr. Clark is here. He had something that I think he was going to talk a little bit about today, but, or maybe not. Maybe that he wants to wait on that. But that being the Bourbonnais Township Park District did not receive cures, cares, PPP, any of that other stuff. They fell outside that source. So his request, and I'll just mention it now, is for reimbursement for all their PPE from that year because of 2020. Because there was no reimbursement coming from as other people received. So that's, you know, we probably would deem that a legitimate request. But I'm just saying it's those types of things that don't fit into a basket fire protection districts can come to really either. Maybe they're public safety related. I think that's probably more appropriate. But we can determine that. It's very fluid. We could kick stuff over to another committee if somebody shows up and they're talking about policing things. We can, at this committee, we can say, hey, we'll take down your idea and we'll make sure the appropriate committee gets it. So it just has to be fluid because this is all new. This has never been really done before in this manner. So there are no minutes obviously to approve. Right. You know, and if you wanted to speak on that, Mr. Clark, I need you on the mic though. Number 18 up in the left corner, far left. There you go.
My name is Hollis Clark. I'm the Executive Director of the Bourbonnais Township Park District. As Chairman Willer was saying, first of all, we fell out of the preview of any federal aid for the Park District. One, we had PPEs. I submitted that to Chairman Willer and the committee for reimbursement on that. But also, if you did not realize, with everything being shut down, our parks got overran with individuals that wanted to be outside and doing things. And talking with my counterparts up north, I know that they are in the process of getting dollars from Will County is planning to give Shanahan and New Lenox dollars for their upkeep of the parks. And this is the reason why I'm here. I'm not going to set a number to it because I feel that we're not alone in this, but I truly believe that the district deserves a piece of the pie. I don't know what that would be. Currently, if you did not know, we have approximately 400 acres that sits in the county. A lot of people does not know that Perry Farm is part of the county jurisdiction. It falls under the sheriff's patrolling it. That includes Willow Haven Park and Nature Center is under the purview of the sheriff's department and the county. And both of those parks was overran in 2020 and last summer. So that's why I'm here. Questions?
Not at this point. No.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. That's good.
Okay, we're going to move right along. Policy.
Under Mr. Chairman, number 6, is that okay?
Yeah,
Under that? Okay.
number 6.
The committee mission and process. Today is more of the start of the policy discussion, because as and if we're in the other meetings, I apologize for the redundancy, but in order for us to be able to work this process, it's somewhat backwards. We got the money, now we need to figure out on what to spend it on. Usually we have projects and then we have to go chase the money. In this case, it's a little bit backwards. So, well, it's a lot of it backwards. So we thought as a group that maybe we should start with the policy, because that's what the requirements of the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act, are. They're specific to. You have to be responding to the pandemic. You have to be revitalizing workforces and business communities and lives within, that are connected within that somehow, and reinvesting in the infrastructure of your communities. That's what this money is intended for. That's what all of their stipulations center around, is the deployment of the money in those areas. So it wasn't too hard to create the Revitalize, Reinvest, committee structure and respond, but with the work we do, and it needs to start with policy. And so inside of this, I apologize, this KCR3, part of it here, this is a launch document that we put together. As I mentioned in the first meeting, Jasmine Humble, Kelly Bilak, Anita Speckman, Steve McCarty were the content managers of this. We all put it together. And it really describes our mission within the document, and it's all online. If somebody's watching this, they can go through it, take a look at it. It's really, where are we at? Where are we starting from? What happened? What are things that we should keep our eye on? What are some policy things, if you will? I've got some Brookings Institute academic and really subject matter expert input onto what people should be doing in terms of, mostly from a equity standpoint, but really communities of all kinds should be looking at certain things, and those articles are in this binder that you have there in front of us. Every board member got a binder. So it's really like what happened, and what basic ground rules do we need to start with in order to make this happen. I also included in the binder the initial round of requests that fell into the other bucket. A good example, might have been, I think Dan's request to the county clerk, that we kind of went outside of this process because we needed to get moving on it sooner. When the software vendor said we're not supporting the voting machine software anymore, we knew we had to do something, because we can't go into an election without having software support. And so we acted on that because we knew we could use ARPA funds on it. So normally that would have come through this committee. We would have said, does it fit into the respond category, or does it fall into the reinvestment one? We probably would have potentially kicked it over to reinvestment, because we're reinvesting in critical infrastructure, and as appropriately, the funds are segregated within the county structure, that you have ARPA money over here, you have the county budget over here. That's in this document on how we're segregating those funds. But within the COVID money, there's lost revenue and then straight up COVID response. So this would be lost revenue. So that would probably go to a different committee, but you would say, I want to throw this over here. We think this project, once we get to that point, supports that policy.
Right.
So, and it fits. So it's fluid. We could, change things as we see things that may need to go a different direction as far as the organization and the flow, but we have to start somewhere. And the best way to start is with public input, public ideas, subject matter experts. In this case, we probably won't have a whole lot until we need them. If there's something that comes in and we say, well, this is just not our area, we need someone to come in and talk to us about this. So if I could, then I'll talk about these policies that we would, and I'll read the first part of the mission statement, and I'm trying to do this in every committee meeting so everybody can really start to absorb this. But the Kankakee County Respond, Revitalize, and Reinvest funds will be allocated for qualified businesses, not-for-profit entities, projects, or direct individuals based upon the ARPA rules. Location, need, impact, and equity. Considering municipalities receive their own allocations, the county will focus on the rural areas of the county, county infrastructure, and areas within the county lacking the resources and/or infrastructure to mitigate the current and potential future pathogen emergency-related issues. The overarching principles that will guide the process and deployment of funds will consider the following, and this is just the start. Additional policies may be adopted down the road as we see fit. We should do that. We should be doing that. We should, so this is just a start. It's not everything to be everything. So as practicable, deploy 2 years of ARPA funds on initiatives that have a long-term impact, 10 to 20 years. Need to fix that because impact's in there twice. That just makes sense to me because this is pennies from heaven that won't be coming again. So you need to be able to address something that is not just a 3-year, well, 3 and done, not 1 and done, but really, how do you make this last longer? That's the best thing for us, realizing we won't be here to fund things after 3 years. Where applicable, utilize special internal funds before ARPA funds. That just is common sense. If you already collect the fees to provide a certain service, then the ARPA funds shouldn't be used for that when you're sitting on X amount of dollars in your special funds. Those are for internal requests we have here at the county. Access grant funds instead of ARPA funds when possible. There's much more available in grants than there is on the 21.3 million that the county's getting. So if there are grants that should be applied for, we'll need to see that they were applied for or they're rejected if it pertains to a specific ask. So we're going to research through all the different avenues out there for grants, like as a screen, to say, well, why didn't you apply for this? Why didn't you apply for that? And we, if they didn't know, then we could say, well, please, you have to apply for that first, and we'll be here to supplant things that may or may not come through. So same thing with special funds. If there's an internal request, and I think that maybe this policy would address that, would be, well, yeah, you don't have enough in your special funds. Maybe ARPA can cover the rest for you to do this project. I think that's well within with reason of the board, to do that. We're kind of funding them getting through a big project. So we've got a couple of those in your packet that we'll dive into all those next time. This was more so you could kind of think about the process. Identify and support communities that were unable or ineligible to participate in the Cures, CARES, PPP programs. There's some that just fell through the cracks on the first time, and park districts are one of those. Fire protection districts were another. There's certain ones that just didn't qualify. And some people that their tax filing, the way they filed their taxes, made them ineligible as well. But they would just have to demonstrate that. Build a consensus for regional projects, solicit public involvement, and deliver the same exceptional transparency exemplified by all other Kankakee County administration processes. We want to have everything online, a complete accounting of all the projects, where all this money is going, because, well, first of all, the public deserves that. Only, I think it's municipalities and governmental bodies that are over, I want to say 400,000 are required to do this, but we're going to do it anyway. It's the right thing to do. People need to know. And then really, at some point, not a post-mortem, but after this money is expended, what are the results? That's an important step of this as well. So if we're going to become a grantor, which is really what we are, and it's program-based, we should be requiring what we're required to be as a grantee from the state. What are we looking for? What are the measurables? If you're trying to move the bar on a project or a situation in the community, it may not apply here in this committee, or maybe it does. Well, what do we want to see as a result to see if it actually worked, or to consider future funding? So those are types of things that we should talk about within this process. So that we do have enough people here today to vote on, do we think this, do you agree with these policies to throw them, and by the way, let me explain this first. If this committee likes these ground rules, if you will, just to start, we would vote on them here, kick them up to the executive committee with all of the other subcommittee requests for approval of their policies. They all kind of match right now. Every committee has the same ones to see if we're all on the same page. Right. Because we can't, if I get 2 people together, that's the limit for the size of these committees because of Open Meetings Act. So we have to be very careful, and we have been very careful, so we haven't been talking in big groups about this stuff. So a lot of the wrench turning, if you will, is going to be done in these meetings, for better or for worse. So the question would be, is this a good start? And then we can go from there. knowing we're not gonna talk projects today, that's more so you can start thinking about what's been given to us, and then we're gonna get into that next week, project to project.
Is there any comments from any of the members? Any of the members that's present?
So this is kind of like the pilot blueprint of what we're going to do until we get into areas of more specificity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I figured it would help that you saw the projects that are being thrown our direction to help us start thinking about what our thoughts are, but also, okay, yeah, does this fit into the overarching policy that says, well, we have to respond to or revitalize in these areas as well per these requests, this big other basket. You know, does what like the Humane Foundation, you know, they weren't able to do X, Y, and Z, they had a request in there. Does that fit into our initial set of policies? You know, and that's the question. And then what would we require of them? And we're kind of doing that on the administration side. If they're looking to be, you know, just, hey, we need reimbursement for X, well, then that's one thing. That's easy. That's receipts. I would say probably, well, I know that's what we'll need. That'll be on the form. But if it's like a new program, a new initiative for an area, it's grant narrative, it's DUNS number, it's FEIN, it's have you ever had to pay back grant money because of mismanagement or misuse, you know, all those different questions that we have to answer when we're a grantee, if that makes sense. Because ultimately, if things go sideways with somebody that we give money to, we have to pay it back, not them. And that would be general fund money that is going away from what the taxpayers paid here. So you see, that's the big, and that's quarterly, by the way. We have to report on that quarterly. So it's a pretty big responsibility.
Right.
And we're not going to set up this huge infrastructure within the county to manage this. So our partners are going to have to, as they say, come correct on those program-based, outcome-based initiatives.
One other question. Let's play the devil advocate and just go into a what if scenario. What if one of the entities or governmental bodies do not have or individuals that are applying do not have the overall credibility, more so the governmental bodies, if they have a responsible oversight governmental body, then they will still be able to apply with the caveat that the responsible oversight agency would have to concur with whatever it is that they would need.
You know, we haven't, I'm not trying to tell people what, I'm suggesting what. In this case, it would be, I think would be in our best interest to have somebody that acts as our project manager, if you will. They're the grantee. So if it's a organization X is the grantee, well, they're responding to our NOFO, our grant opportunity, because we want to do X, Y, and Z in the community and have this happen. But they would be the point of accountability, and they could contract with this continuum of people to execute that and hold them accountable for their paperwork and all the things that they need to do. But ultimately, we want one tied to that grant application. Does that make sense?
Right.
Yeah, sorry, I keep hitting this microphone, but it's, excuse me. It's one of those things where we have to be very careful, very careful.
Right, and the policy, even though we are probably going to agree on the initial policies here, this is not concrete as it, if the policies I believe can be amended if required, if we come in to something.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's the goal. We had to start somewhere. We had to start the conversation because in the previous meeting, there was comments, well, there's things that need to be done now. Well, we may not want to wait. We can't wait 6 months to do a policy and then a project on something that needs immediate help right now. And so we can talk about that as a one-off, but we just had to start, okay, I'm sitting here thinking, we got all these requests. How do we work through all this in a logical manner? Start grouping them into buckets and get people in the room that are focusing on just one area. This committee being policy, once we get the projects and say these are viable projects under that policy, we're kicking them into finance version of this committee, which is surprisingly the same people. So, but then we're talking about prioritizing and funding on the committee level. Then we send that up to the finance committee, and the full finance committee will put it all into the big list of 1 through 200 stuff that is critical, and then sooner or later there's going to be a red line when we run out of money. Does that make sense? And then somebody could come in with a great idea in year 2, 2.5, and we say, wow, that just made the top 10. So some other things may get bumped down.
Yeah.
It is dangerous, but it's open and transparent, because this is a 3-year process. And I hope that makes sense the way that I put that. I'm trying to build in flexibility because we've never done this before. Nobody's done it like this as far as I can tell. It's like, it could go sideways really easily, and all these different rabbit holes and no accountability and all these little projects. And what have we done? 3,000 little things and never tackled one big thing. That's another issue as well.
And just one other question. There are some things in our county that are, it benefits everybody. Say if there's a project at the courthouse where it's allowing, because of COVID, a lot of the cases was bagged up and whole 9 yards. Maybe they might have found an electronic system that can help in whatever. And then in your election process, there are some things there that's holistically helping everybody throughout the county.
Right.
That's like one area where everybody benefits. Then there's the selective areas where there's townships that the county kind of oversees because they're unincorporated. So we want to protect the interest of looking at their projects as well. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the chairman stated that they're also reaching out to like the city of Kankakee and others to see how we can maximize and not reduplicate services as far as that's concerned. That's still the understanding in this process, correct?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's townships are in a strange position, on this one because they weren't in any of the other things as well. But they do have other opportunities available to them via grants that the county may not get.
Right.
So it could be a hybrid situation that we end up looking at for townships. Most of the services the townships are doing are either public assistance or roads. Really, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that's the main focus of the townships. And to call us when their ditches fill up with TVs and refrigerators, and mowing properties that are vacant, things like that, if they do have the resources to do that. So I'm not saying it's I'm not going to get into some of the other discussions we've heard here for the last few months, but I will say that it's one of those things where we have to know where we're at, and maybe with the municipalities in those townships, maybe we partner. And I realize Hopkins Park they had 70 grand. That's not a lot of money. I believe that was in order. But they may have things on a very small scale that we could partner on. The skin in the game is an important aspect, and then whether that's in Herscher or Hopkins Park or Mantino, the city of Kankakee is a natural partner if we're trying to address the things that cost all taxpayers in the county money. And it's not being vindictive or calling them out, but most of our public safety costs comes from the city. So if we address that, we're helping all taxpayers and citizens in the county.
Right.
And the same thing with Hopkins Park and elsewhere. So I'd say it's any and all of what you're saying. And then we may have things here that we're starting to get a lot of requests in this area. This needs to be its own subcommittee that starts working through this, So I don't know if Mr. Chairman, I don't know if there's a motion to approve these initial principles.
Right. I think we'll look for a motion to approve this as the beginning of the policy.
Then I would make the motion that we accept the what I call the initial policy as it is written, with the opportunity to amend as needed.
Adjustments, right.
I'll second that then, Mr.
We got a second. Roll call.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right.
Okay.
So you've got the initial projects that were under other right now, so you can take a look at those and start to internalize them. We will ask the next committee, when we come back, we'll potentially pull out ones that are immediate action items and put those at the top of the agenda. By the way, it's a hard stop at an hour. So, because we got these all day, so we'll, boom, we'll motion to recess if we haven't voted on anything or whatever, so we don't have to go back through all of that again. So it's, we should be okay, or it could be motion to adjourn if we've got through our business, which we have today, so.
So we need a motion for adjournment.
So move.
Second,
Second.
roll call.
Mr. Wheeler?
Aye.
Mr. Payton?
Aye.
Mr. Snipes?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you all very much for participating and coming out.